Good evening. 37 years after the World's End murders, two teenage girls have finally received justice with the conviction of a man who's been called Scotland's secret serial killer. Angus Sinclair, already serving 2 life sentences for murder and sex crimes, has been found guilty of raping and strangling Christine Eadie and Helen Scott in 1977. Over now to our chief reporter, David Cowan.
The judge, Lord Matthews, has just given Angus Sinclair his 3rd life sentence. He called him a dangerous predator capable of sinking to the depths of depravity. He's ordered that he should serve 37 years before he can apply for parole. That's a record minimum life term in Scotland, and it means that Sinclair would have to live to 106 before he was able to be asked to be released from jail. The judge said he picked that figure deliberately. Our first report tonight comes from Sharon Frew on today's verdict.
Angus Sinclair appeared detached and indifferent when he was taken back with the jury to the area where he dumped the girls' bodies. Today he showed no emotion when the guilty verdict was reached. Helen Scott and Christine Eadie's families have waited 37 years for this day.
There were 2 young girls, innocent girls, going out for a night out, just taking their first steps in the world, really. And for it to be cut short in the horrific manner in which it was, I think there's no doubt that that was something that affected everybody that worked in the case.
Sinclair has been convicted of raping and strangling Helen Scott and Christine Eadie in 1977. Both were just 17 years old. The World's End murders are thought to be the oldest crime to be prosecuted in Scotland. This conviction was won with 21st century DNA analysis of the girls' clothing.
From 1977 through to the current day, there's been nothing lost, and the condition in which everything has been retained and preserved has been remarkable. There's no doubt, looking back over the generations, this case affected the people that worked in it, the scientists, the scenes of crime officers, the police officers. There's a sense that people never let go.
A determination to catch a killer that's finally given the girls' families justice. Sharon Frew, STV News at the High Court in Livingston.
Well, judges have been trying to find words to describe Angus Sinclair and his crimes. For over half a century, he has an appalling record, and it's taken 4 decades to bring him to justice for the World's End murders. But that's happened now thanks to DNA, thanks to prosecutors, and thanks to thousands of police officers who never gave up.
Angus Sinclair has spent more than half his life in prison, but only now has the full horror of his crimes emerged. A 69-year-old man with failing health stands convicted as a serial killer who got away with murder for decades. Today's verdict means Sinclair has 4 confirmed victims, but detectives are convinced there were at least 3 more.
He is Scotland's most dangerous serial killer. In that period of 1977, many women met their deaths at the hands of Angus Sinclair.
Alan Jones spent 14 years investigating the World's End murders.
I've spoken to him personally. He's very personable, polite, and you would not expect that of a person of his nature. But right from a very early age, he's been a conniving, evil individual. He's sexually motivated. A lot of his crimes have had that element to it, and that's never left him. And even though he has that facade, there's something behind the eyes that tell you he's a dangerous individual. And even at the age of 69, he's still a dangerous individual.
Sinclair was just 15 when he killed for the first time, raping and strangling a little girl in his hometown of Glasgow. Charged with murdering Catherine Rehill, he was allowed to plead guilty to culpable homicide on the grounds of diminished responsibility.
53 years ago, the authorities knew how dangerous Angus Sinclair was and the threats he would pose in the future. The judge who jailed him at these courts called him callous, wicked and cunning. A psychiatrist said he showed signs of being a psychopath. But in 1968 he was released, free to kill again and again.
Agnes Cooney, Hilda Macaulay, Anna Kenny and Mary Gallagher were killed in Glasgow between 1977 and 1978. Sinclair was never a suspect. Police reconstructed Helen Scott and Christine Eadie's last known movements, but despite a huge inquiry, Sinclair was never caught. Sexually motivated murders of women in the west and east of Scotland weren't linked.
You had various police forces, and for whatever reasons, They didn't generally jail, and they didn't pass information properly, and they didn't talk to each other. I mean, that's a fact.
Joe Jackson secured the confession that took Sinclair off the streets for good. In 1982, he admitted raping and sexually assaulting 11 girls in Glasgow, aged between 3 and 14.
He said to me, he says, "Look, Mr. Jackson, I only hope we can get them all cleared up. I've done so many I can't remember them all. I could have done 50. We'd have been looking at more rapes, we'd have been looking at more murders. I don't doubt that. We'd have been looking at more rapes and more murders."
Jailed for life, Sinclair has spent the last 32 years behind bars.
The technique is revolutionary.
At the start of the new century, DNA was breathing new life into old cases. Sinclair's genetic fingerprint was linked to 17-year-old Mary Gallagher, raped and strangled in Glasgow in 1978. He received his second life sentence. Then the World's End inquiry found Sinclair's DNA on Helen Scott's coat, stored carefully since 1977. The breakthrough and their reward for never giving up. This is Sinclair around that time, a small man who'd kept himself fit in jail.
Are you able to recollect at all where you might have been at that period in October 1977?
In hours of questioning by police, he gave nothing away. A stone-wall silence. The new science and old-fashioned detective work revealed Sinclair's accomplice. His brother-in-law, Gordon Hamilton, was cremated in 1996, but police traced a flat he decorated years ago and found one of his hairs and his DNA in the coving. It looked like they had their man, but at trial the judge threw the prosecution case out of court, ruling there wasn't enough evidence for a conviction.
Absolutely shattered. What's going to explain how I feel?
Within 4 years, the Scottish Government changed the rule on double jeopardy, allowing retrials if the prosecution had strong new evidence.
The challenges that have to be met by the Crown are high. A second trial will only come around very, very rarely. That's the situation south of the border, the situation elsewhere, and it will be the situation here. But where it is a case of such importance, justice has to be seen to be done and be done.
Sinclair was back in the dock. The Crown presented the courts with new DNA evidence from the clothes used to tie up the girls. Helen Scott's brother was 11 when she died. This is the moment he phoned her father with the result.
Hello. Hi, it's just me. It's a yes. It's a yes. It's a yes. I mean, it's not time to celebrate. We've obviously got a lot more to do. But 7 years ago, this just wasn't possible. So this is absolutely history in the making.
Ultimately, the jury will deliver a verdict on the evidence, and everyone will respect that.
The Lord Advocates had met the families the day after the first trial collapsed and led the prosecution at the second. Frank Mulholland spoke to STV News, where the girls were found in East Lothian.
Both girls suffered a horrific death. I think that's self-evident from the nature of both murders. So that is, you feel for what those girls went through that night, and I suppose that's what's driven me over the years. I suspect that what happened to the girls happened within Sinclair's vehicle within this car park. So it certainly fits in with timings that this happened over a number of hours, unfortunately, which just increases the horror of it, I think. Albeit there's no eyewitnesses, the girls are dead. What you've got is the best eyewitness is the forensics and the expert evidence. That is effectively the girls' voices. There's evidence that Helen Scott was alive when entering the field at Huntingdon Coats. She must have seen her friend been murdered and known that she was walking to her death.
Half a century ago, a psychiatrist predicted Sinclair would kill again if given the chance. The judge had said no young girl would be safe with him about. Words which echo down the years, warnings which were forgotten.
We still need your information.
Tom Wood led a national investigation which links Sinclair to Agnes Cooney, Hilda Macaulay and Anna Kenny, 3 more suspected victims of his killing spree from 1977. But the forensic evidence hasn't survived.
I have no doubt that Angus Sinclair has been responsible for other serious crimes. We may never know the full extent of his offending, but it's a funny old world, and you never know what else might come out of the woodwork.
Angus Sinclair had a son who was convicted of murder while serving with the army. His own child has nothing to do with the man whose crimes caused such grief and misery. Maureen Scott has visited his daughter's grave every weekend for the last 37 years.
They'll never leave me, because I was up here, I saw her that night, on the Sunday night, and the jury's obviously seen the photographs. I mean, her life was stolen from her. No, it'll stay with me to my last days. But the only consolation, if there is one, is that the legacy left is a double jeopardy bill, and there's hope for other families that if they feel things have gone wrong, there's always a chance that they can get the case reopened. Unfortunately, Helen and Christine had to lose their lives to get this, but that's it.
Helen Scott had a shopping list in her pocket when she was found. She had plans for the future, big and small. When her father visits her this Sunday, he'll know that Helen and her friend have received justice at last, and their killer will never be freed.
Well, after a 5-week trial, the jury took 2 hours and 20 minutes to deliver unanimous guilty verdicts. At the request of STV News, cameras were allowed into the High Court to film Lord Matthew's passing sentence.
As for you, you have displayed not 1 ounce of remorse for these terrible deeds. The evidence in this case, as well as your record, details of which have now been revealed, shows that you are a dangerous predator who is capable of sinking to the depths of depravity. I sentence you to life imprisonment to run from today, and I fix the punishment part at 37 years.
Well, as you'd expect, there was a great deal of emotion in the court this afternoon. Tears from family members, hugs with police officers. The Lord Advocate named 11 detectives who'd worked on the case over the 37 years, some of them no longer alive. But tonight, finally, what was arguably Scotland's most notorious unsolved crime has been solved, and Angus Sinclair has received another life sentence which will guarantee he dies in jail. Back to you.
David at the High Court in Livingston, thank you.